it was all new again going down to Sheffield, and I didn't know what to expect. And when I got there, bloody hell, it didn't half hit me. Like any big club, you're gonna know about it if you're not performing, and it was a tough environment. As I say, sometimes when you're at your lowest, it sort of shows what you're all about, you know, that way. And like for me, it was just like getting back in. I was thinking, oh, I'm back in now, I ain't coming out of this team, whatever it takes. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a lot of fans there probably saying, well, you should have been left out loads of times, you know. To play in an FA Cup semi-final was, never expected that. And looking back, we should have bloody got to the final as well. So that's a hard one to take. It was a special day to, go to Wembley with Sheffield United.
This is the Sheff United Way podcast.
We'd now like to welcome Dublin-born former Blades midfielder Michael Doyle to the Sheff United Way. Michael, thank you for giving up the time. How are you, sir?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. To say, a bit surprised when I got asked to do this. To say, it's been, I think Sheffield United they've been on the crest of the wave since I've obviously left that second year when Nigel Atkins took over, and then Chris came in, and it was never looked back, which was amazing. So as I say, nice to come back and have a chat, and looking forward to it.
Do you still look out for the Blade scores?
Oh, 1,000,000%. As I was up at Notts Forest game there, I went to the game, one each, and being back a few times, obviously still keeping regular contact with Enda, because I played with Enda at Portsmouth and that. So it's as I say, always looking out. I only live an hour down the road in Sheffield, so obviously I'm involved in the game still myself. But whenever I can, I get up. And funny enough, Tony Curry literally rang me yesterday and asked me to go up to the game, up to his be his guest up for the Coventry game in a couple of weeks, because I actually met him at the Notts Forest game. And it was great to see TC. He's such a great person, and he was an amazing person to treated me great when I was at the club, and bumped into him and had a good chat. And then bloody a few days later, he's ringing me, inviting me back up to his box, which sums up the type of people that are at the club of Sheffield United. They're just such a that's why it's so hard when you leave these places. You get so invested in them because the people that work at them and the way they treat you when you're there. So it makes it even harder when you have to leave these clubs, because as I say, I hadn't seen TC for a long time, and straight away he's ringing me, asked me to go back up to a game and that. And it was just it shows the class of the people that are around the club.
I think that's true.
That's a great start. That's a fantastic start, Michael.
Well, something that Nick and I often say is how former players take the city of Sheffield to their heart, and what you've just said, the club. It's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will get there. We'll get to the Sheffield United stuff. We want to start right at the very start of your career. How did you get into professional football?
Yeah, I was probably a bit of a late bloomer in Ireland, as they say, because a lot of lads are away from the age of 15, 16, signed the clubs. But I'd kind of started my journey about then. A lot of lads are younger, 11, 12, going away. And I was about 16 when I started going away to clubs, and that I was going to Blackpool, Stockport, and a few clubs, and then just basically playing for the club I played for, Cherry Orchard, and I was having a couple of good seasons, and then got a few trials and nothing kind of developed, and then I got an opportunity to go to Celtic when I was just under 17s, and it was lined up for a long time, just waiting for the season to end. And basically the season ended, and a week before the season ended with me schoolboy club, I got a letter through from Celtic asking me to go over on a month's trial, and that was basically how it started for me. So I had to take a month off work at the time, which I was a plumber, and which I had no hesitation in doing, and the boss was great to me, and took a month off. And as I say, 20 odd years later, I'm still away, and I'm over in England still. So yeah.
Well, I got two questions. One, with your plumbing knowledge, I've got an issue under the sink with my water filter. I don't know if you're any good still with any of that knowledge.
Well, I tell you, my shower is bloody freezing up here, and I ain't got a clue. So you're really asking about the person,
And my second one was, you mentioned Cherry Orchard. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, your buddy Enda Stevens, didn't he have a spell there?
Enda was there, Stephen Quinn was there, Alan Quinn, all the Quinns were there, yeah. So it's a quite renowned club on the south side of Dublin. So it's yeah, it was a brilliant club to play for, and yeah, it was quite. I loved it there. It was some of the best memories in my whole career was playing in that couple of years. The last few years at Cherry Orchard, great friends and great teammates, and I was very grateful because I ended up getting away because of them people around me, the teammates and the managers and staff, because we just had a great belief, and sort of we won a lot of trophies in them couple of years. It was brilliant times.
I'm fascinated about your time in 01-02 in Denmark.
Again, very fortunate. I was at Celtic and playing there, and the next player at Celtic had just finished his career, Mark Reaper. He'd retired and he'd gone back to where he was from. He was from a city called Aarhus, and obviously I didn't have any links to it, but just basically one of the reserve team coaches, I think Mark Reaper must have been ringing looking for some players. He was looking for a left-sided player, I think, and obviously they weren't going to get a first-team player, but my name, I think, was mentioned, and they basically took a chance on me, and I went over there in a season-long loan, and it was the making of me, really, because I was so far probably from breaking through at Celtic. I had a couple of opportunities trying with the first team and that, and I was nowhere near kind of ready for the level with the players that were at Celtic. I probably struggled in them couple of opportunities I got. It was quite daunting going in and training around the first team. At the time, the chances were limited, and when I did train, openly admit I struggled, and you think, bloody hell, I'm nowhere near ready for this. So when the opportunity to go to Aarhus came, I wasn't sure how it was gonna be, but I went over, and I just straight away I kind of settled in, and the training and that was obviously nowhere near the level of when you get a chance with Celtic first team, but it was still good, and the tempo was a bit slower, so I kind of found my feet and settled in right away. And they had a fantastic stadium that they played in, and we were playing in the top division in Denmark against Brøndby's and Copenhagen's and all these sort of big clubs. So it was an amazing experience, and it was a beautiful city to live in, and I had a great time over there. It was brilliant.
You mentioned about needing a left-sided player, and we always remembered you as that midfield general, that leader. So where did you play? Left back, left wing?
Yeah, do you know what? Funny enough, believe it or not, people won't believe it, but I was a left winger when I first went to Celtic, and but within a couple of weeks of being at Celtic, when I went up sort of on the trial, we went on a tour to Ireland. And I was a goal scorer in midfield, left-sided player at Cherry Orchard and that. And in Celtic, after about 2 weeks of being there, they put me in sort of the middle of the park playing as a box-to-box midfielder. And that's where I basically got a contract at Celtic, and that's where I played for the rest of my time. But when I went to Aarhus, they kind of played me as an inside left. I wasn't a winger, but I was playing out on the left, and I scored a few goals and that playing off. I was box to box still, but I was more playing like a left-sided left winger, but I was playing inside, I wasn't involved in much of the build-up, as they say, out wide beating players. But it was a great experience. The team were down near the bottom of the league when I went, and we managed to stay up. And as I say, it was probably the making of me getting that first team football and being around that environment, and it was great for me, and I came back to Celtic then, and kind of wanted to stay out in Denmark. If I'm honest, I had the opportunity kind of to stay. They would have liked to keep me, but when I went back to Martin O'Neill at the time, he was saying, look, give it another year here, and let's see if you can kick in around the first team, and if you don't, you can go at the end of the season. We'll look after you and try to do things right. So it was a no-brainer really to go back to Celtic when someone like that's telling you about, hopefully see if you can get in around the first team. But
can I just say, I don't want to sound like a geek or a football nerd, but
we all know you are, Hal, anyway.
We know I am. The computer game Championship Manager 01-02, you are listed on it as a left winger. So yeah. I knew you were a left winger because I always signed you.
Yeah, well, there you go. As I say, it was I was a left-sided player, and I was still finding my way. I had a lot to get better on and develop, and but as I say, I was always 100% in anyway, so I always sort of played over there. It was great. And when I went back to Celtic, though, the moral of the story, I went back to Celtic, and was even hard to even play in the reserves then, because it was under 21 football. You were only allowed 3 overage players, and I came into that category then. And like a lot of the first team, I mean, the first team squad at that time under Martin O'Neill was immense. Like the top players, 20 odd top players, and a lot of them lads weren't playing, so they were dropping back to try and get a game in the reserve. So it became a bit tough, like, and I'd gone from playing in Denmark every week then to struggling like to get game time at Celtic. And at that time you couldn't go back out on loan, and to Scottish clubs it was a weird kind of rule that back then you couldn't go on loan or something. So I had a hernia operation at Christmas, and then after Christmas, once I got fit, I spoke to Martin O'Neill about, things didn't look like they're going to progress there. What was the options? And he just said, look, get yourself away now. Try and see if you can get a club between now and the end of the season. And if you don't, he says, there'll be a contract here if you, at the end of the year, if you want it, you can come back and we'll keep you on for another year, which it was a brilliant bit of security, but I was never realistically going to go back and take that. I knew the way I was thinking is, look, if I don't get something, there's not that there's no point in going back to Celtic, but my mentality was, look, I've had my chance there. It's time to try and move on now and see if I can get something else. So I kind of knew that the opportunity to go down to Coventry on trial where Eric Black was there, because he'd been at Celtic and he was quite close with the reserve team manager, and they'd looked at me quite a lot, I think. And that was basically the option. Then I went out to America for 2 weeks with the New York Metro Stars at the time, who are now the New York Red Bulls. And so I went there it was come away from Celtic, go out there, did a pre-season with them out in Argentina. But I knew in the back of my head I wanted to play in England, and I knew I was going to come back and take the opportunity to go down to Coventry for a couple of weeks on trial, and I did that. And that's basically, that was the start of it really for me with English football.
So you enjoyed a spell at Coventry under former boss Mickey Adams. What are your memories of working with Mickey?
Do you know what? He was absolutely brilliant when he first came in, because he came in from Leicester and we were struggling at the time. I think, what was it? Well, Gary McAllister, obviously, he had to step down for his wife. She was ill, and it was very unfortunate because I was enjoying it. And then Eric Black and Peter Reid had spells as managers, and then we were struggling. I think Peter Reid, he came in and then things didn't happen, I think, that he wanted to happen, and he stepped away. He didn't get sacked, and we were in a bit of we were struggling around the championship, near the bottom of the table, relegation battle. And Mickey came in, and he just left Leicester, and he came in, and he was sort of high profile at the time for us coming in, and he was brilliant to me. I mean, at the start I was in and out, but Mickey was all about getting his teams fit and organised, and that was right up my street. It was a lot of hard running and things, and that was probably one of the strongest parts of my game at that time. I was really fit, so all that type of exercise I was standing out in, and found my way, and he kind of took to me, and we ended up finishing really strong. We had a couple of great years under Mickey. It was really enjoyable. He took us from Highfield Road. He was part of that down to the Rioch, and as I say, I enjoyed it a lot under him, and as I say, I played every week, and it was great, but like everything in football, it's when things don't go well, he ended up getting the sack, and which was a shame, because I really enjoyed it under him.
You'd get another opportunity, because we're going to talk about the move to beautiful downtown Bramall Lane, reunited with Mickey Adams after you'd had a loan spell at Leeds, but it's Leeds, so we don't need to talk about that. So tell us about joining Sheffield United, please, Michael.
Yeah, it was, like, as I say, obviously my spell at Leeds, I loved it, and we don't hear
this, Michael.
Skip the Leeds stuff.
Well, basically, I went back, and Eddie Boothroyd was the manager, and Eddie had been at Colchester the year before, so I played against him. I think he wanted me to stay, and which I was fine with, because I really enjoyed it at Coventry. I loved it. I played a lot of games for him, and I was happy to go back. And then I had a chance to go to Huddersfield or something, and I spoke to Eddie about it, and he didn't want me to go, and that it basically played out then that I was in the team at Coventry, and then so it was a bit of politics, I think, took over. Then after about 4 or 5 games, we were unbeaten, and we signed a player and I was keeping him out of the team, and I think out of the blue then Eddie had said, if you can find something, and kind of changed tune basically. I think it come over his head, and I think it was a player, Sammy Clingan at the time, was out of the team, and the club had signed him from Norwich, and it was a big sign. And I found myself out of the team, which was disappointing. And he sort of said, "Oh, if there's anything there, we'd help you. You could move on." And I was thinking, well, I'd had a move to Huddersfield lined up, 80, and you kind of put the kibosh on it. You didn't want me to go, and 2 weeks later, you're telling me. I said, "It's not happening. It's gone. They've moved on, and unless something comes up for me that suits me, I'm not going to go." So I found myself out of 80's team for about 6 weeks, frustrating. But it was funny how things turned. After about 6 weeks, he pulled me up, and I found I was back in the team every week. And then another 2 weeks later, the captain, 𝐍𝐸𝐫𝐍, he basically broke, I think 𝐍𝐸𝐫 had done his Achilles or something, and it was just strange how football works. And 80 pulled me up to the office on the Friday and said, "I'm going to make you captain now. 𝐍𝐸𝐫 is out for the season, so you're going to be the captain." Which I was shocked, but he just said, "Look at the way you've handled yourself and the way you've trained every day and things like that." He said, "You're a credit and you're going to lead the team for the rest of the season," which it was great. I wasn't expecting it. And then I was playing, and then kind of Mickey got in touch with me and just said, "What's your situation?" and told him. And he just said, "Look, at the end of the season, would you come to United?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd be certainly interested in it." And so that was that. And then about a week later, I think things sped up, because I think Leon Britton was at Sheffield, and I don't know whether he wasn't happy or part of Mickey's plans, but he was back to Swansea. So that speeded things up for me. And I'll never forget it, because it just all happened so quick, because I think he'd left on the Friday, and I spoke to Mickey to go, and I said, "Oh." So on the Sunday, we were playing QPR, like, who were top of the league. And I remember going into 80 on the Saturday and having a chat, and he's like, "Well, there's a contract here for you for another year if you want." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And Mickey was like, "Listen, you can't play. If you want to come to us, this deal's happening Monday. You can't play." And 80 said, "Look, we need you to play." So I was like, "Okay." So I played for Coventry it was my last game for Coventry against QPR away, who were like top of the league. They're a great side under Warnock. And I played in that game. Obviously, I knew if I got injured, the deal was going to be gone. But I felt I owed it to the club. And, 80 he treated me well in the end. And I played the game, and then that was it. I was basically went down to Bramall Lane the next day and signed there. It was, I knew it was a big club, but you don't realise how big these clubs are until you actually go and you're in them and you play for them, because all I'd really known all that time was I'd been at Coventry, which I'd loved it, and then I'd been at Leeds, which was, I won't speak about that, but it was a great club as well. But I went back to Coventry and thought, right, I'm happy now, and I was playing, but the kind of, it was all new again going down to Sheffield, and I didn't know what to expect. And when I got there, bloody hell, it didn't half hit me what I was in for, because it was probably one of the toughest times in my career, to be honest with you. And I look back on it, with the environment that I went into, in the sense of being in relegation and the expectations with the fans. Obviously, you will know, you'd been in the playoff final the year previous or so, and next division or relegation battle. And like any big club, you're going to know about it if you're not performing. And it was a tough environment. It was a very tough environment.
Yeah, it was tough. We obviously hated it as well. We went from being in the Premier League to a playoff final, and then boom, relegation. It felt like it was every season. But obviously, you're saying that it was a tough time. We don't want to harp on about it too much, but kind of what was the dressing room like back then? Like, were there bad eggs in the dressing room, or why do you think we went down?
Well, I think straight away, like when I look back now, when you're on your third manager in January or whatever, December, you've got three managers, three different groups of players in a sense, that have all. So, I think it's a good learning lesson probably for any fan if that club is in. I mean, the two times, it's not something that I'm proud of, but the two times I basically was relegated was the two times I moved in January, and both clubs were in very similar situations. It was when I went to Notts County at the end of my career, they were on the third manager, and I went in January, the same as Sheffield, and it was very similar situation. Just a lot of players with, say, attitude, but probably not playing, and it was a tough environment, certainly at United, because you had some great pros and great people. Like, I mean, Monty and Cressy and people like that, they were great. Like, they were obviously great people around the club and wanted to do well, and then you know, it's hard to manage and police people, I suppose, for lads that you can only go out and play yourself and try and do all you can. But certainly, when I look back, you think some of the stuff to carry on, it was it was a weird environment.
Well, we won't put you on the spot, though, will we, Nick? We won't put you on the spot and make you list any bad eggs or anyone that had a bad attitude. That would be unfair. But we will say, like Nick said, it was a horrendous time for us as fans. But I think one thing that's positive that I will just ask if I can is, how did you feel when you became club captain?
Well, again, it was obviously amazing honour. But it was very similar to the Coventry situation, if I look back on it, because it was League One and I knew I was going back there. I didn't want to go, I didn't want to leave because I'd only been there 6 months. And listen, I know as well as anybody, in that 6 months that I was there, or the 3 months, 4 months, whatever it was, and we got relegated, I don't think I had a lot of, like, you know, everybody, oh, we have to keep him. It was, you know, what have we signed here? Like, it was like everybody else. Everybody was being criticised, you know, you're at a big club. But I wanted to kind of, in my head, I didn't want to go. I was thinking, I want to kind of show, I want to stay here and help the club get back up, you know, and that was my mentality. But basically, Danny came in and I ended up having a great relationship with Danny, but it was tough at the start because I played the first game away at Oldham, which was great, and then I think played the next game, and then we signed Kevin MacDonald, and Kev was a very talented boy, but he didn't set the world alight when he first came in. He wasn't fit, and I ended up, after about 3 or 4 games, he ended up taking me out of the team and Kev coming in, which was, I was disappointed at the time, but Kev was like a top player. He ended up being a top player, but I was taken out of the team, which was disappointing, and I was just waiting for opportunity. I think Kev had a few spells where he broke down with injury. And then it was Monty was out for a long time, and I trained hard. And I think when I went back into the team, Monty was injured. Then he made me captain, and I was like, again, I'd gone from being a sub to going into the team to be captain, which was, you know, again, it was brilliant. And but through that season, then me and Kev nailed down our places as the kind of 2 midfielders, and Monty he'd had a few injuries, and we could hit a bit of form, and Monty found himself out of the team. And I think it was tough for Monty, you know, because he'd been at the club so long, and he'd been through a lot. And he was held in such high regard by everybody around the club, and all the players had so much respect for him. But it ended up me and Kev being in, and I'd obviously ended up being the sort of captain. But, you know, I had a great relationship with Monty, as I say. It can't be easy, like, but it's a competitive environment. We all want to play, and you're going to do whatever it takes to get in and play. And I kind of had that little spell of them first couple of months in the season where I was in and out. I was the odd man out, and it was tough. Like, I'll never forget it. Like the Sheffield derby, we played, Monty being out injured. I think we played Charlton at home, and we played quite well. And I think we ended up losing the game 3-0. I'll never forget it. And I was like, I don't know how we lost the game, but they beat us 3-0. They were a good side. And then we had an international break, and Monty was injured. But I think Monty was kind of rushing back. The Sheffield derby was coming up, and I'll never forget it. I wasn't expecting it, and I got left out, like, and then I went in on the Saturday. We done the team on the Friday or something on the Saturday because it was a Sunday game, and I was out, which was disappointing. It was right kick in the gut. Like, I don't think I'd ever felt this low being left out. And my dad and that were over at the game, and then I went in on the Sunday, and I wasn't even on the bench, which was, you know, I was like, bloody hell, I couldn't believe I'd never felt this low. I was absolutely devastated, you know. It was just, I suppose that stage in my career, it was tough because we just suffered the relegation, and you were in and out of the team, and you're thinking, bloody hell, what's going on? Mentally, it was so tough. Like, I was thinking, bloody hell. And I'll never forget us sitting there because we'd signed the lad Phillips of West Brom now from Blackpool, and Billy Clark, them two come in. So I ended up missing out on the bench. They signed on the Friday. I couldn't believe it. Not that like that they were in ahead of me, because they were both quality players. It was just devastating.
They did do well, didn't they? In
that
they did
brilliant. Both of them, like Phillips was an unbelievable player. He was absolutely amazing. And I'll just never forget us sitting in that stand with my dad watching the game. We were 2-0 up, and they came back 2-2, and it was just a really tough sort of, probably one of the toughest standout, like, where I've been left out, and you just felt so far away because, as I said, being at Coventry and that for so long, and then you're at a new club, and like everybody, you're not exactly, everybody's holding you in this high regard. But that was probably the making of me in the end. I just did what I always knew what to do, and that was just go in and work hard and keep my head down and push everybody. And I did that, like, in a sense. And I'll never forget, like, the assistant manager at the time, Danny's assistant, after about 4 weeks, pulling me and saying, "Do you want to speak to the gaffer?" And I says, "No, Frank, why?" And he's like, I just don't know what to say to you, the way you're training and keep pushing. He said, "I'm just like, he just give me a little G up." But he was probably the best assistant I ever worked with, Frank, because the way he was just that little chat. I didn't ask him. It was just like recognising how it'd gone about. And then a couple of weeks later, I think I was back in the team, and that was it. I never looked back. And as I say, sometimes when you're at your lowest ebb, like, and it really tests you, it sort of shows what you're all about, that way. And like, for me, it was just like getting back in. I was thinking, I'm back in now. I ain't coming out of this team, whatever it takes, I was thinking. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a lot of fans there probably saying, well, you should have been left out loads of times, but just in my own head, it was just to keep fighting, because I just wanted to break through with that club. I wanted to be a part of that team that was going to take it back up, and I knew the disappointment that was around the club. So yeah, that was basically it. And I ended up becoming the captain then for the next 3.5 years, I think, or whatever. So it was a great honour.
Well, before Nick asks the next question, I'm just conscious of the younger viewers. Danny is Danny Wilson, and Frank is Frank Barlow. Nick knows I always do this.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry.
When you said Frank Barlow, I thought it was Barlow. When you said Frank, I think that's Frank Barlow, but then I thought, is that a Coronation Street character?
It does sound like a Coronation.
Sure there. But talking about being captain as well, what I noticed from you were always, like, a new manager would come in and they'd make you captain straight away, because they could easily kind of come in and be a bit of a power play, like, I'm giving your captain's armband to somebody else. But the fact that you were always the captain, it must be a great feather in your cap.
Well, yeah, but don't get me wrong. When a new manager comes in, it's a new leaf for everybody. So first person they probably look at is the likes of the captain. So it wasn't a case of me thinking, I had to work as hard as anybody and show them what it's all about. And, I think when 𝐍𝐸𝐸 came in, it wasn't a case that he came in and I was captain. I had to earn it again, it was back to square one. I remember it took him about a month to 5 weeks to announce. So he sort of took his time. And yeah, as I say,
but that's exactly why you were the captain under everyone, because you knew that you weren't just going to get in the team because you were the captain.
Yeah,
you earned that captain's armband. So yeah, that's just brilliant.
Yeah, like that was it. Like, as I say, I knew there was people like that, and rightly so. They wanted to be the captain. There was a lot of characters there that wanted to, and you'd see, the kind of, they'd probably act a little bit different then when a new manager come in. There's opportunity, but I always just tried to be consistent and be myself, and as I say, and I was fortunate then that manager seeing something in me that, a lot of managers seeing over my career that, that was, I had that kind of, character to be that, to lead the teams for them. So it was great.
So who were those backseat captains then?
Nah, that was like just always,
Backseat captains. That is not a saying.
There was a lot, but look, at the lads were always, when I listen, it's not something I'm not having a pop at people in a sense of, I think
you can do that after the stream.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael, the stories we've heard off screen.
Well, this is it. But as I say, it was, it was just, you could see with people would act different when managers would come in, and that was the way. But I always felt like with characters, you see it with people, they don't play under managers and they get back in at the start under new managers, and because they come out and it gives them something, new manager, a chance again to impress. And there's a lot of people in football that do that, and they're only kidding themselves really, because the true colours kind of always come through again. Then you see 6 weeks and 2 months later they're back out the team wishing another manager goes. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot, you just see it so much. It's so many weak characters in football. There is a lot of weak characters in football. That's what they are. There's a lot of weakness in people in football, and they try. Survivors is what they are, like, because they wish managers gone, and it's I've seen it in so many dressing rooms, and it's poor, but it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you just said that, it sounded like players playing for contracts as well. I suppose that's quite similar.
Listen, lower down, and it is, you're always fighting, there ain't long contracts like in the Premier League and Championship now. It is about surviving in a sense, and you're always trying to impress, because the contracts, a lot of people are 1-2 years, and it is a hard industry to survive in, to be honest with you. But it's about how you go about it, I suppose, and it's clubs lower down, they do have a lot of power on players as well, and rightly so, because it's you got to have hungry people playing for you, and if people are sitting there on 2-3 year contracts, they can lose that hunger very quick. And the amount of people you see when they're on them year contracts and they have an injury and they play through it, but then you see them when they've got 2 and 3 years and they're quite relaxed. They take an extra few weeks or a month if they need it, because
we can think of examples.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about some nicer moments from your Sheffield United time. So get the relegation out of the way.
Yeah.
What do you remember from your first Blades goal against Yeovil in January 2012?
January. Where was that at? Yeah, was that at Bramall Lane?
I think that says it all, and you don't remember it at all.
I don't really even remember it, to be honest with you.
Well, do you remember any of your Blades goals? Then maybe that's an easier way to
scored some bangers, Hal. He definitely remembers some of them.
I do remember a few, of course. I always remember Pommpey on the night when Danny'd actually lost his job, and then I think Morgs was manager. I might have been Cloughie first game, but we beat Pommpey 2-1. Mickey Adams was manager, and I scored the winner that day 2-1. But I remember, bloody hell, we only played at Rochdale there the weekend, and I was saying to our sub goalkeeper, I played here. He said, "You played here before?" I said, "I did. I played here with Sheffield United," and I'll never forget it for many reasons. And the reason I remember the game so well was it was our game in hand to go second in League One, and we played our game in hand on a Tuesday night, and we won 4-2. Ched scored 2, Kevin MacDonald scored 1, and I scored 1. But it was Ched's last game for us. It was the game before MK Dons. It was when the trial was. I know, but it was just like, that was the reason. It just stuck out a mile. It was.
This is why we wanted to talk about Yeovil. There was nothing awful around it.
No, but it was just the circumstances of playing at Rochdale. I remember the game so well, and I just never forget that game, because I just thought we're doing this. We're going up, and everything went after that,
Well, I'll just jog your memory with the Yeovil one. It was Sheffield United 4, Yeovil 0. It was a beautiful downtown Bramall Lane. It was. That's a good question.
I think it was Gary Johnson's first game in charge of Yeovil actually coming back. I think I remember it now. Yeah, I think I remember it now, because he took them over, and I remember we beat them 4-0, and obviously the next year then they go up. But I remember it well. Yeah, I remember the game when we beat them. I didn't realise it scored. Now I say it just refreshes the memory.
36th minute, you had Richard Creswell get a goal, and Lee Williamson got a brace.
Yeah, Lee Williamson was a brilliant player for us that year. He was excellent. He did great for us, Willow.
Well, we're talking highlights. What was your highlight of your time at Bramall Lane?
Listen, obviously the cup runs were amazing times, and playing in a FA Cup semi-final, never thought I'd get to do that in my career. I'd watched that game all through my life growing up, being a Liverpool fan I was, and remember the first game was watching Wimbledon. That I remember was Wimbledon and Liverpool, when Liverpool lost. John Aldridge missed a penalty, and just FA Cup was such a special day, because we didn't have much football back then, as everybody knows. We didn't have 1,000 channels. We had about 6 channels, and football was, you got what you could of it, and the FA Cup was the one game you knew was going to be on every year. So to play in an FA Cup semi-final was never expected that. And looking back, we should have bloody got to the final as well. So that's a hard one to take. And then obviously the following year, getting to a League Cup semi-final with some brilliant days along the way, beating Southampton and teams like that was great times.
Funny you should say that, Michael. When we spoke to John Brayford, he said the exact same thing. We were saying, "Oh, you did so well getting to that semi-final. Even the semi-final, we scored 3 goals, and it was party time at half-time, being 2-1 up." And he said, "Oh yeah, but we definitely should have won that. And the fact that he was so hard on himself, it sounds similar to what you're saying right now.
It's just so many, because basically that whole cup run in the FA Cup, we had a tactic. The way we got going under Nigel Clough was we were sitting behind the ball, 4-5-1, hard to beat. We had Murphy on the wing and Flynn, who used to walk us backside off, and then you had Jose Baxter leading the line, who was brilliant because he could hold the ball up and bring these people with pace in the game. Then we had Cody and Skougal playing in front of me, loads of legs and energy. It just walked. And we did it, and we ended up getting to an FA Cup semi-final. And to be fair to Cloughie, when we got to the semi-final, we never used to walk on anything, but I just always remember him before the game, named the team, and he's like, listen, we ain't sitting back. We're going to go for these now. These are going to expect us to sit back. We're going to go totally different. We're just going to go and have a go after. So if you remember the game, like they had put Tom Huddleston playing as a number 10. He usually played as a number 6, but because the way they'd set up all week, they thought we were going to sit back and be hard to break down. And we came out and we got a lead. I think we're 2-1 up at half time and walked the 3. And I'm not criticising any manager and things like that. I always remember Gary Crosby. Cros never used to come to games, but he came to semi-final. He was like Cloughie's assistant. And he's like, we're not sitting back. We're not sitting back. We're going to go out and get another one. And obviously it's easy looking back, but we should have just sat back and done what we'd done all cup run. We'd had our go off them and we'd got ourselves a lead. Let's kind of sit back now and be hard to beat and see if they, can frustrate them. And we ended up, the tie was basically over after 60 minutes because I think they'd gone 4-2 up. And I always remember speaking to Quinny after the game. He was like, Doyle, we were bloody gone at half time. We'd made a load of changes, couldn't believe it. We were shocked. He said we were gone. If you'd seen our dressing room at half time, he said we thought we were out. So it was just like, all ifs, buts and maybes. It was a great time. We overachieved, and it was it was a special day to, go to Wembley with Sheffield United, and there was no real pressure on that day in a sense. And it just, from fans' point of view, they just got right behind us and, clapped us off at the end. Like, it's, I know they'd had many a heartbreaking days going down for playoff finals. It was different, but it was that was special.
We were so proud of you that day. We really were. You could probably tell the way that we clapped you off, like you just said. Conceding 5 goals in a semi-final, you would think we'd be going crazy. But the fact that we scored 3, we were 2-1 up at half time. We scored 3 goals at Wembley against a team 2 divisions higher than us.
We hadn't scored at Wembley since Alan Cork against Sheffield Wednesday.
I remember that game as well. Watching them games, it's with Big Beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't even remember that. That's how long ago it was. Yeah. So no, it was a fantastic day, and you all did us proud, like I said. But yeah, there was a few other times as well, weren't there? Like you said, we beat Southampton. We went toe to toe with Spurs as well. Yeah. Let's find out a little bit more about how you left Sheffield United then, because obviously we thought you were going to be there for a great deal longer.
Yeah, I mean that was again tough, like, because I just I think the whole ending was disappointing for me, really, because I felt like that was the hardest bit that I look back on for me when I think about it, was the way I left the club, and I felt like I ended up not playing in games because this was the plan all along, in a sense that I was going to be released. And I remember sitting there in the playoff games thinking, like, Ryan Flynn was playing in the middle of the park. Ryan was a great player, like right winger, but he was playing in midfield. And I was thinking, this is like, you know what I mean? Because I think we got injuries in the first leg at home. We lost 1-0, and but it was just disappointing because I felt like I could have added something still at that point, like, but I kind of knew what was coming then. At that stage, I hadn't played the last few games of the season, and it was, I was thinking, all right, but I hadn't had a conversation with anybody to say, look, you're going to be leaving. And that was disappointing. I think I spoke to the chief exec after the Chesterfield game, and we were at an awards night that night, and he Mal Brannigan, I had a great relationship with Mal, but he was sort of like, oh, what are you going to do next year? And I was like, what? I was like, what you mean? Hopefully going to be here. And he's like, oh, yeah, just no. And he did. I was thinking, all right, which was disappointing because Chesterfield was basically my last game, and that was disappointing, But again, I wasn't one for doing. Not that I would have had a lap of honour or anything like that, but just to say good, say thanks to people. And you could have. I was captain at that stage. I could have done something in my programme notes to say, look, And look, at the same time, if the club were saying to me, look, we don't want to, that would have been fine with me. But even, you know, I remember in the Swindon away game thinking, how am I not playing here? Like, you know, but even if we had had that conversation, I still would have given me all for the club. And listen, I wanted to be in as good a situation leaving the club. If I was playing and doing well, helping the club, you know, trying to get up, I think the benefit. But look, maybe it just genuinely wasn't, you know, they didn't rate me anymore, you know, simple as that.
Well, I have some info on this because one of the reasons this has happened is through a mutual friend, Jim Phipps. And the way that I first got in touch with Jim was to talk about you. And I reached out to him during this time, and I'm one of these people, Nick knows this, that when I'm not happy with something, I don't just complain on Twitter. I actually try and do something about it. And I wasn't happy with how the club had treated you, and I decided to write a strongly worded letter to Jim and explain to him that I thought you were treated very poorly. You'd been a great servant to the club, and I felt it wasn't fitting the way that you were let go really by the back door, and the fans were never given an opportunity to thank you. And I think at the very least the club could have done would have been something like programme notes. You know, that's a very small thing that they could have done. And he admitted on this channel that they got it wrong.
Yeah, it is what it is, and that's, you know, I really appreciate that, as I say, and that's thanks very much. But yeah, it was just one of them things. You know, 4.5 years there, and the one thing I'd always done was put my heart and soul into everything that, you know, at every club I'd been at. I'd always left me all there. Sometimes it wasn't good enough, but I'd always had the character, you know, to go out and try and play and put it right. And yeah, just that was tough leaving Sheffield. It was really tough. It was like, you know, you're going in somewhere every day for 4.5 years, and then it's just like, bang, you go in after that playoff semi-final. I think released 2 players that day, me and Ben Davis, and then we were gone, and that was it. It was just like, right, that's it. And that was tough, like, you know.
I never understand this, because I remember this vividly, and I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, how can they get rid of yourself before? Because obviously Clough was leaving, and then Adkins came in. So why would you get rid of a player when another manager may want you, if you know what I mean?
I think, as we've seen over the last couple of years, maybe the ownership stuff, there was 2 owners then, and I don't know whether that decision had been made yet once the players were released. I think I'll never forget after the Swindon game, it was, when I look back, it was quite bizarre now, but Jim had come in and given a quite passionate speech after the game and about, you know, Nigel's the manager and we're going to go forward and Nigel's going to be here and we're going to support him all the way and this and that. And then, you know, that was that. Okay, fine. Then next day I'd obviously left the club, and then about a week or 2 later, Nigel was gone, and I was thinking, bloody hell, what's going on here? Like, you know, because I was thinking the same as like what yourself was like, how can you release players then and then you get the sack? So I think maybe other things probably took over there and happened. And
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think I have an idea what happened, but it's not for me to say. And but it's, yeah, that was it. It was done, and yeah, that was it.
It was a messy time, but luckily there's never been a single messy time at Bramall Lane ever since.
Yeah, it's no, look, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was yeah, I mean, I left, and I was very fortunate. I went to Portsmouth from there, and that was an amazing club. It was such a great time. I absolutely loved it. It was, and that was, you know, then Chris had gone into United, and we both kind of won the league the same year, and it was, I'd have loving that more than anything, to be a part of it.
Well, I work with the stadium announcer at Portsmouth, the former stadium announcer at Portsmouth, I should say. And we, obviously, the only thing we kind of had in common for a while was you. So that was kind of I know he spoke for Portsmouth fans, but they adored you. And yeah, you did very well there.
I just loved it there. Again, I kind of, you know, them back a few years in League One at Sheffield United, I felt like I was enjoying it. I was coming into my own. I was loving it. And then, you know, under Nigel that year, I'd gone from being a big part, and it probably all started with Nigel was after the FA Cup semi-final, believe it or not, because we signed Andy Butler, and one of the lads rang me and said, "Oh, have you seen what the gaffer says?" I said, "No." And he's like, oh, this Andy Butler, we signed him. He's saying, you know, they must have asked him a question and again. And probably the media side of it, you know, always wondering about captains. And he said, oh, you've signed Andy Butler. Is he captain material? And he was, oh, yeah, this and that. And I was like, bloody hell, like, so we just got to the FA Cup semi-final, but you're going back again. And it's like, right, got a fight on my hands here, got to dig in. And it was just like, went back and things were different. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, I'll never forget, I went back and like, yeah, it was just like we signed a few players, which is competition, which you expect, brilliant. And then pre-season, I was in and out. There was a lot of stuff, and I'm thinking, no, something's going on here. Nothing was being said to me. And then the week before the season started, you usually put out a strong team, and we went to York away.
I was there.
Yeah, and James Wallace and I think Bash were playing, and somebody else, and James
Harrison
Wallace,
McGay, his name. He was playing
a bit of a random midfield again, and I was on the bench. So I was thinking, bloody hell, I'm gonna be, you know, I'm out. I'm not going to be starting the season against Bristol City next week. I'm out of the team, all right. And James Wallace got stretchered off after about 20 minutes. You know, James was a good player, and bless him, it was injuries belated him all through his career. He ended up retiring really young. It was a shame because he was a good player.
He was a good player, yeah. He really was.
And I was thinking, right, that's me. I have a chance now. I'm in. And I came on in the game. We lost 3-0, and you could tell Cloughie wasn't happy and whatever. But long story short, we got to the Friday, and young Louis Reid come up training with us for a couple of days. We signed Michael Higdon on the Friday. I think on the Friday, the game was on the Saturday. And, you know, went out, you know, I thought I'd be playing the next day, and got into the ground, and I just remember Nigel coming in and said, I have a word with you. And he put me and Neil Collins together, which has never happened to me in my career. And he's, you know, he pulled the two of us in, and he's like, no place is in the team today. No place in the team today. He's on the bench. I was like, all right, sound gaffer, no problem. I was thinking, bloody hell, what's he doing here? And next of all, young Reedy's ended up making his debut. Like, he hadn't played a game for us. I don't think he was only 17. He's playing in the middle, and I'm like, bloody hell. And then Craig Alcock and Harrison McGeady played centre halves, and Craig was a right back, put him in a centre half, and Harrison was a young lad come in. Don't get me wrong, they all did well, but Michael Higdon literally signed the day before. He made him captain.
Remember, we're in the armbands.
And it was like, everybody was like, what's going on here, you know? But
we were like that as well in the stands.
That was Nigel, and I'll never forget it. Like, played on the Tuesday against Mansfield in the League Cup, won that game, came back out of the team. Andy Butler played his first game against Mansfield, and then he left on the Friday to go to Walsall back on loan, or Doncaster, one of them.
What happened there?
Just like Butts came in, and he kind of didn't. He was struggled a little bit pre-season. It was all new to him because he was a really good player for Walsall a couple of years before.
Yeah, they loved him
a little bit, but then I think basically he pulled Butts before he pulled me and Neil, and said to Butts, "No place in the squad for you today." I think Butts had said to him, "Well, I ain't come here like to not play. I want to play." And he's like, "Well, if you don't like it, you know, it's." You know, basically, you know where to go. And he played a game, and then he was gone the next week. He was gone before the second league, and we were like, "What's going on here?" But that was Nigel's like style. I'm not saying there's right or wrong in it. It was just like, bloody hell. It was like, but I ended up out of the team for about 4 games, I think, and we didn't win a game, and then we played Peterborough away, and we went down to Peterborough away, and I think a bit of pressure started building. They put us back in. And he left Michael Higdon out of the team that night. You know, it was a big signing. And I think myself and Neil Collins went back into the team, and it might have been a few others, but we ended up going on a bit of a run from there and picking up again, you know. So it was, as I said, I got back in the team, and then kind of got to around February, it might have been March time. You know, out of the blue, it was like, gonna give you a rest tonight. You're on 4 yellow cards, don't want to lose you for the Port Vale game. We were playing Scunthorpe. And I was like, oh, right, I was a bit shocked. And we beat Scunthorpe 4-0. And then I never really played after that. Like, that was it. Like, you know, it was kind of, I think I played against Chesterfield when we were sort of in the playoffs. And Chesterfield was the last home game of that season. And I played in that. And I think I might have come off with 15 minutes to go. And I don't know, without saying to me, I think if I was meant to do all this because I was leaving the club. But as I said, at that stage, I knew what was kind of going on, but I wasn't going to make it I wasn't aware, like, in a sense, but in your head you can kind of read the script. But yeah, that was sort of the end of my time.
That's tough. All right, let's talk about a positive before we close, which is not where you played your best football, but, you know, Portsmouth, back to Coventry, Notts County, we've already mentioned, our house and the Blades. Where did you enjoy playing your football the most?
In a strange kind of way, I've been very fortunate with the clubs you mentioned that I got promoted at them all. So probably torn it on its head. I absolutely loved it at Sheffield United. I loved it. And I'm not saying that in a sense of, but probably Sheffield United is the one I look back at the biggest regret, because I never got that promotion, whereas the other clubs I did. But I absolutely loved it. And, you know, that was hard. It was hard because you just want to be part of that team. And I say probably the saving grace for me when I won the league with Portsmouth, when Sheffield United won the league, is that I won the league with Portsmouth, because that was tough, like, because you were looking at bloody hell, you know, it fought so hard to get it, and it was always circumstances, whether it was a loan, you know, bringing a striker in, or bloody someone getting injured or whatever. We just always seemed to fall short, and it was tough times. But I'd say I've been very fortunate in my career at all the clubs I played at, and I'd never put one, and I'm not being a brown nose, you know.
I've got a feeling, like Nick, we always ask this question, and I've got a feeling if we had Ian Rush on here, he'd say Sheffield United is the most enjoyable time.
As I say, do you know what? I'd never put one above the other. I have special memories of Portsmouth and Coventry and places like that that'll just never leave me. And, you know, I do have special memories of Sheffield United because we, you know, getting to the cup semi-finals and playoff finals. It was the making of me at the end, because I got a lot of success at the end of my career when I left Sheffield United. You know? You
did. You absolutely did. I didn't know which one you'd pick, but we love hearing that. I do just want to say there's one thing, Nick, that we haven't touched on.
What's that?
Oh
my God!
How have we not mentioned that?
We've not spoken about that. He's going to do it. I thought you were going to do it for us, Ed.
Oh, he's got the picture.
We can't even get it in, lads. Today, is that it?
That's why.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what? I'm in a room here, and
we don't mention that.
There's loads of pictures and all. And it's funny, I hadn't got that out on purpose, but that was when I was at the Forest game. Funny enough, I was on a table, and a few Sheffield United fans come in, and they're chatting away. They're lovely lads. They actually live in Nottingham, and one of the lads brought up the Cockney walk thing that I got referred to, but. Yeah, it was. That was a great night as well. Again, I forget that. Yeah.
Did you do it because there was a bit of needle, like you knew the history and you knew that we hated West Ham?
Well, obviously we knew the history and that, but yeah, obviously the Tevez masks were all in that corner and things like that. So, listen, it wasn't planned, because the last thing you think when you're going to a penalty is you just hope you score. It's jelly legs, and especially in that situation, because it was so much for us. Like we were playing a Premier League team and
played blooming well that day, I tell you.
Yeah, we played great. We had to dig in, and, you know, typical, you know, under Nigel performance. We were hard to beat and dug in with good threats on the break, and it was just one of them things. I'd done it and then start celebrating, and then, you know, and yeah, that was the rest of sort of, I say history, but it was just a great memory in a sense of.
You became a bit of a cult hero after that.
Yeah, I just forget all about it, and then you bring it up. And as I say, them lads last week when I met them at the Forest game, it was, it was funny, but yeah.
I thought you were going to do the walk for us for a second, then when you went off camera.
It's just, you know what, people probably think bloody hell, but I'm just in a room with loads of pictures and all here, kind of stuff around it, and it's.
We didn't tell Michael to get that in advance.
No, it's not at all. But it's just funny, and I was sitting there, and when I come in and put the computer on. And that was there with a few pictures that I have, like, you know.
I mean, we've loved hearing you talk about your time, particularly at beautiful downtown Bramall Lane. Michael Doyle, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to speak to you.
Cheers, mate. See you soon.
All the best. Cheers, lads. Bye-bye.
Cheers, buddy.